Welcome to our channel. In this video, we'll explore how Johnny Winter rose to fame. From his early fascination with music alongside his brother Edgar, to the notable influences and collaborations that defined his sound, Johnny Winter's journey is one of remarkable talent, intense struggles, and enduring passion for the blues. Join us as we delve into the moments that shaped his career and ultimately led to his untimely passing, leaving behind a legacy cherished by fans worldwide. Childhood Johnny Winter entered the world on February 23, 1944, under the name John Dawson Winter III. Born in Beaumont, Texas, a southeastern town known for its oil-related industries, Johnny had music running in his veins from an early age. Despite a tough environment for someone with albinism, he discovered a sense of refuge in the notes and rhythms that shaped his daily life. The region itself had a rich musical heritage. Southeastern Texas was home to a variety of influences, from Cajun and Zydeco to gospel, and of course, the blues. Growing up in this melting pot may have contributed to Johnny's eagerness to explore different styles and eventually hone his craft in ways that set him apart from other guitarists of his era. In his early childhood, Johnny might not have envisioned himself as a future music icon. However, the cultural climate of the 1950s, when rock and roll was taking root and blues music was crossing over to broader audiences, was transformative. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, T-Bone Walker, and other blues legends had already established the foundation upon which younger artists like Winter would build. Meanwhile, rock pioneers such as Chuck Berry and Little Richard had become household names, merging blues and R&B to create something fresh. By the time Johnny was a teenager, the seeds of the British invasion were also being planted overseas. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Eric Clapton would soon bring the blues to global consciousness in entirely new ways. Yet in 1969, when Johnny Winter first broke out on the national scene, the hype around him was immense. The record business wanted a new Jimi Hendrix, someone who could fuse blues authenticity with rock's psychedelic flair and mesmerizing showmanship. While Johnny never soared to the same commercial heights as Hendrix, the raw power of his playing and his dedicated approach to traditional blues gave him a durable appeal that lasted well beyond fleeting trends. Unlike certain flash-in-the-pan guitar heroes, Johnny Winter remained relevant by returning to the roots, championing the blues, and staying true to his passion even when the mainstream market shifted. This strong sense of tradition and authenticity can be partly attributed to his upbringing. In a household where music was appreciated, we'll delve into that in the family section, Johnny picked up instruments, listened to records, and paved his own path. In an era where the music scene was constantly changing, psychedelia, folk rock, the British invasion, soul, Johnny's unwavering commitment to the blues was something that set him apart. He understood that the form's emotional core was timeless, and he wanted to sustain that spirit rather than merely follow popular trends. Family. It was in the family circle that Johnny formed an inseparable bond with music. His younger brother, Edgar Winter, born on December 28, 1946, also had albinism, marking the siblings with a shared distinctive appearance and certain life challenges, such as extra sensitivity to light. Rather than hindering them, however, their condition and the curiosity it inspired in others helped them stand out in the music world. Edgar became an accomplished keyboard and saxophone player, showing early on that the Winter brothers possessed a remarkable level of musicality. They started collaborating while still in their teens. By the late 1950s, both Johnny and Edgar were dabbling in local groups and finding ways to get on stage. Johnny and the Jammers, the band they both joined, recorded School Day Blues, You Know I Love You, a single that, while modest, signaled their official entry into the recorded music scene. Imagine being just 15 or so years old and already cutting records. This was a testament to the Winter Brothers' drive. At the time, regional labels like Dart Records gave local acts a shot. It was an era before the internet, meaning radio, jukeboxes, and word of mouth at live shows were central to a musician's success. As Johnny honed his guitar skills, Edgar worked on keyboards and sax, forming a sibling synergy that would continue in various shapes for decades. Audiences loved the novelty of two albino brothers, who were both virtuosos. But once the novelty wore off, it was their talent that kept people listening. Blues, rock, jazz, and pop, the Winter Brothers eventually explored multiple genres. Johnny, however, would always be more deeply rooted in the blues than Edgar, focusing on that hallmark sound marked by sliding notes, raw vocals, and heartfelt improvisation. At home, the Winters supported the boys' musical inclinations, though there was always the practical matter of finances in a mid-century Texas household. Nonetheless, the environment was encouraging enough for both siblings to make headway in the music business. When they went professional, they encountered the typical challenges, balancing stage appearances with the normal responsibilities of teenage life, dealing with band members' schedules, and navigating the labyrinth of small-time record labels. But each step prepared Johnny for the bigger leaps to come. Career. Other singles, either credited to Winter or some group's pseudonym, were released over the next several years, including Gangster of Love / Eternally, initially issued by Frolic Records in 1963 and picked up for national distribution by Atlantic Records in 1964, and Gone for Bad, I Won't Believe It, also a 1963 Frolic single that was licensed by MGM Records in 1965. Winter had his first taste of chart success with a version of Harlem Shuffle, recorded by the Traits, which was released by Universal Records, then picked up by Scepter Records, and spent 2 weeks in the Billboard Hot 100 in November 1966. In 1968, Winter decided to focus exclusively on blues rock, and he formed a trio with Tommy Shannon on bass and John Red Turner on drums. He signed with the Austin, Texas label Sonobeat Records, and in August, cut the progressive blues experiment released locally. His life was changed irrevocably with the publication of the December 7, 1968 issue of Rolling Stone magazine, which contained an article by Larry Sepulvado and John Burks about the Texas music scene. The hottest item outside of Janis Joplin, they wrote, remains in Texas. If you can imagine a 130-pound cross-eyed albino with long, fleecy hair playing some of the gutsiest, fluid blues guitars you have ever heard, then enter Johnny Winter. Among those who read the article was New York club owner Steve Paul, who hopped a plane to Texas and convinced Winter to hire him as manager. Paul set up a bidding war among major record labels that was won in February 1969 by CBS Records, which signed Winter for an advance of $600,000, the largest sum the label had ever paid to a new solo artist. Winter quickly went into a recording studio with his band to cut his debut for CBS's Columbia label, but in the meantime, other labels discovered that he had made a lot of recordings in his youth, and they began buying or leasing the early material. Imperial Records bought the progressive blues experiment from Sonobeat and re-released it in March 1969. It entered the charts and peaked at number 40. Winter's Columbia debut, titled Johnny Winter, was released on April 15th and peaked at number 23. In August, GRT Records released the Johnny Winter story, consisting of material recorded in the early 60s. It got to number 111. In October, Buddha Records followed with First Winter, and Janus Records released About Blues in November. Meanwhile, Winter appeared at the Woodstock Festival in August 1969. His second Columbia album, Second Winter, was released in November 1969 and reached number 55. In the spring of 1970, he disbanded his trio and enlisted the former members of the McCoys to back him: Rick Derringer, Randy Joe Hobbs, and Randy Z. The group was dubbed Johnny Winter and. Their self-titled album was released in September and peaked at a disappointing number 154, but they followed with a concert collection, Live Johnny Winter and, released in February 1971, and it reached number 40. In 1974, it was certified gold. Winter was not able to capitalize on the career momentum generated by the success of Live Johnny Winter and. He had become addicted to heroin and suffered from suicidal depression, as a result of which he suspended his career and went home to Beaumont. See more under Scandal. In this age, before rehabilitation clinics, he was hospitalized initially in Beaumont and then for 9 months at River Oaks Hospital in New Orleans. His next appearance on disc was as a guest on Roadwork, the live album released by Edgar Winter's White Trash in March 1972. Which was preceded by Edgar Winter's introduction, in which he said people kept asking him, "Where's your brother?" Johnny Winter was not able to return to action full-time until the release of his comeback album, Still Alive and Well, in March 1973. The album, which featured Silver Train, a song specially written for Winter by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, peaked at number 22. Winter returned to touring. His next album, Saints and Sinners, appeared in February 1974 and peaked at number 42. Before the year was out, he had another one ready. And John Dawson Winter 3, featuring Rock and Roll People, a song specially written for Winter by John Lennon, was released in November, peaking at number 78. For Captured Live, Winter was transferred to a Steve Paul-created custom label within CBS, Blue Sky Records. The album was released in February 1976 and peaked at number 93. Edgar Winter was also on Blue Sky, and the brothers combined for a live album together released in June, which peaked at number 89. Veteran bluesman Muddy Waters was signed to Blue Sky, and Winter became his producer on a comeback LP, Hard Again, released in February 1977. It won the Grammy Award for Best Blues Album. Winter toured with Waters' band, then took them into the studio for his next album, Nothing But the Blues, released in July 1977. It peaked at number 146. Another Winter-produced Waters album, I'm Ready, came out in February 1978 and was another Grammy winner. Winter returned to working with his usual band for his next album, White Hot and Blue. The album, released in July 1978, got to number 141. Raisin Cane, recorded in more of a rock mode, appeared in March 1980 and failed to chart, concluding Winter's CBS contract. Winter signed to the independent blues label Alligator Records, for which he made Guitar Slinger, released in May 1984. It returned him to the charts, and its follow-up, Serious Business, was another chart entry. He completed his commitment to Alligator with Third Degree. He was then signed by Voyager Records, distributed by MCA Records, for the winter of '88. The album represented an attempt to take him in the more commercial direction of ZZ Top-style synthesized blues boogie, but the attempt backfired, and the album did not chart. Winter returned to more of a straight-ahead blues approach after signing to Virgin Records' Point Blank / Charisma imprint on his next album, Let Me In. He followed it with Hey, Where's Your Brother? In September 2010, he announced that he had signed to Megaforce Records. His label debut, Roots, appeared in 2011. True to the Blues, The Johnny Winter Story, a multi-disc retrospective spanning his 6 decades as a professional musician, celebrated his 70th birthday in early 2014. Scandal. It's hard to overstate how pervasive drug use was in the rock and roll milieu of the late 1960s and 1970s. Venues often had backstage areas stocked with various substances, and touring musicians could easily become reliant on them just to cope with the grueling schedule and performance anxiety. It wasn't just heroin, cocaine, LSD, and various prescription pills circulated freely. The tragic losses of Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison, all around the age of 27, cast a long shadow over the entire decade. Musicians who succumbed to addiction often faced an uphill battle if they wanted any semblance of normalcy, let alone a sustainable career. Johnny Winter wasn't immune to these temptations. It's likely his rapid rise to fame amplified the pressures he felt. There's an enormous weight on a headline act, expectations to deliver night after night, to uphold the mystique of a wild rock star. Add to that the personal insecurities Winter may have carried from childhood, and the result was a dangerous cocktail that nearly ended his life. His hospitalization and hiatus made headlines in music circles, fueling rumors that his creative spark might never return. When Winter reemerged with Still Alive and Well in 1973, it was more than just a new record. It was a declaration. Johnny Winter was back, not merely surviving, but eager to play his heart out. The personal battles he fought gave him a deeper well of emotion to draw from, and the fans could hear it in his music. Songs like Still Alive and Well took on a personal resonance for audiences who knew the precarious path he had walked. Winter's story stands as a counterpoint to the dozens of artists who didn't make it. His successful recovery, however incomplete or ongoing, is a beacon of hope, proving that life after addiction was possible. In today's world, structured rehab programs and widespread mental health awareness are more accessible, though still not universal. In Winter's era, these resources were scarce. His self-imposed retreat, hospitalization, and eventual comeback stand as testament to his resilience. When we talk about Johnny Winter's marriage, particularly his most documented one, to Susan Warford in the early 1980s, it's easy to overlook how significant that chapter was in the larger arc of his life. At first glance, there's not a lot of public information. Winter was deeply private about his personal affairs, choosing to focus interviews and stage banner on music rather than marital details. But the timing of this relationship offers a crucial glimpse into who he was beyond the spotlight. By the early 80s, Johnny Winter had already survived a tumultuous period marked by heroin addiction, a struggle that nearly claimed his life and forced him off the stage for a time in the early 1970s. His triumphant comeback began around 1973 with the release of Still Alive and Well, followed by collaborations that reestablished him as a force in the blues rock world. This second wave of creative success spilled into the late 70s and set him up for a new era of recording and touring in the next decade. That's precisely when he married Susan Warford. The fact that Winter was marrying at this juncture, after navigating such a dramatic personal and musical transformation, suggests he was striving for more than just chart success. He was looking to solidify a new sense of balance. He'd already proven he could triumph artistically after overcoming addiction, and his union with Susan appears to coincide with that renewed drive to recenter himself both on a personal and artistic level. For an artist so deeply committed to touring and live performance, having a relationship that aligned with his new, more stable phase could have played a quiet but vital role in supporting him. Of course, details about their life together are scarce. Winter chose not to let tabloids and fans peek behind the curtain. Yet, that very choice to keep their marriage out of the headlines reveals something about his character. Where many rock icons of the era were followed by swirls of gossip, Johnny Winter seemed determined to protect the sanctity of his personal connections. Perhaps he understood that the best way to maintain both his momentum and his well-being was to ensure that, however chaotic his schedule got, there was a portion of his life that remained private and free from public scrutiny. It's also telling that his marriage took place during a period of renewed creative output. As Winter was diving back into recording, releasing albums on various labels, and broadening his musical collaborations. While the public mostly saw him tearing it up on stage or grinding away in the studio, there was a quieter dimension at home, an emotional anchor, you could say, that may have helped him stay grounded through the demands of an ongoing comeback. The music scene was intensely competitive, with changing tastes and an industry hungry for the next big hit. So having a stable personal life likely helped him handle these pressures. In short, this rarely spotlighted chapter in Johnny Winter's story reminds us that musical legends aren't solely defined by record deals, stage presence, or iconic guitar riffs. They also navigate the same need for emotional fulfillment and personal support that we all do. Winter's decision to keep his marriage mostly under wraps prevented the tabloids from sensationalizing it, but it also means we don't know every last detail. Even so, the fact that he married during a period of renewed focus underscores his human side, his desire for companionship and normalcy amidst the roaring energy of the blues rock world. While the marriage to Susan Warford remains shrouded in mystery, it stands as a testament that beyond the roaring amplifiers, Johnny Winter was seeking more than just musical triumph. He was committing to a relationship he believed in, albeit quietly. That choice, too, is part of the legacy of a man who famously poured every ounce of passion into his guitar, yet still recognized the power of personal connection. As fans, we remember him for his scorching solos and raw, soulful voice, but behind those stage lights, there was a private life marked by its own unique milestones and moments of commitment. Other relationships. Johnny's collaborations weren't limited to these big names. Over the years, he shared stages and studios with a who's who of rock and blues. For instance, he jammed with icons like B.B. King and Albert Collins at various festivals. He also recorded alongside other guitar luminaries, sometimes showing up as a special guest on live sets or in the studio to add his signature slide guitar. Winter's authenticity and no-frills approach to making music made him a welcome presence among artists who respected the blues tradition. One of the most fascinating aspects of Winter's collaborative spirit was his eagerness to promote older blues musicians who deserved renewed attention. When he teamed up with Muddy Waters, it wasn't just for the accolades. Winter genuinely believed in preserving and honoring the roots. By producing Muddy's Grammy-winning albums, Winter effectively bridged generational gaps, bringing older Delta blues to younger rock audiences who might not have otherwise discovered it. Rick Derringer had already tasted fame with the McCoys, Hang On Sloopy, before collaborating with Winter. When they joined forces, they created a potent mixture of rock bombast and blues authenticity. Derringer's melodic approach, paired with Winter's raw, soul-bearing style, gave the band an appeal that was both radio-friendly and credible among hardcore blues enthusiasts. Derringer later had his own hits, including Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, a staple of 1970s rock radio, a song closely associated with Winter as well. Their relationship was mutually beneficial. It showcased Derringer's guitar and songwriting chops while giving Winter a creative foil who could meet him note for note. Death. In early 2014, fans worldwide were already celebrating Johnny's remarkable legacy through True to the Blues, The Johnny Winter Story, a multi-disc retrospective covering his astonishing 6 decades as a professional musician. Think about that range for a minute. 6 whole decades, from his earliest days cutting local singles in Texas to becoming an international stage presence. This collection wasn't just a random greatest hits package. It was a thoughtful compilation that demonstrated the evolution of his sound, his guitar style, and his sheer dedication to the blues over a lifetime of recording. Essentially, it was a grand career-spanning spotlight that affirmed Johnny's place as one of the most passionate torchbearers for the blues tradition. But in the very same year that the retrospective came out, and at a time when most artists would be content to rest on their laurels, Johnny Winter was still touring. He had just turned 70, yet he chose to mark that milestone on the road, doing exactly what he loved most. That level of commitment says a lot about him. Rather than slow down, he kept pushing forward, playing gigs, sharing his fiery guitar work with fans across Europe. Sadly, on July 16th of that year, he passed away while on tour in Switzerland. For many fans, this was a heartbreaking end, knowing he left the stage for the last time in the midst of doing what had defined his entire existence. Then came Step Back, his final album, released a little over a month after his passing. It was described as guest-laden, and that phrase alone speaks volumes. Winter had built a lifelong reputation as both a revered solo artist and a supportive collaborator, working with iconic figures and rising stars alike. Even in his last recordings, he invited fellow musicians into the process, demonstrating that he never lost his enthusiasm for synergy and musical camaraderie. The result was an album that underscored his enduring spark. His playing still had that crisp, vigorous edge, filled with scorching slide work and searing leads that confirmed he remained at the top of his game. It's almost poetic that Step Back arrived when it did, because fans got a powerful reminder of how Johnny's passion had never waned. While many guitar legends of his era either stopped touring, retired, or fell off the radar, Johnny refused to let age or past challenges define him. The story told by these final recordings is one of unrelenting drive, and hearing his guitar parts on Step Back, people realized that his skill set, his signature tone, quicksilver runs, and soulful phrasing hadn't faded a bit. In the broader context of his career, these final projects form a 2-part legacy. True to the Blues looks back at everything he'd accomplished, almost like a retrospective exhibit at a museum, while Step Back shows that he still had more to say musically, new ideas, fresh collaborations, and a renewed desire to keep pushing blues forward. Together, they capture both where he'd been and where he was still going, right up until his untimely passing. He wasn't someone who merely reminisced about past glories. Instead, he embraced his legacy in a vibrant, forward-moving way. And that's why his passing stung so deeply for fans. It felt like an unfinished conversation. Yet through these last recordings, listeners could hear loud and clear that Johnny's hands were still on the fretboard, confidently leading the charge. Even though the man himself was gone, the spirit and the artistry lived on in every note, resonating far beyond his physical departure. True to the Blues and Step Back give us 2 powerful snapshots from the final chapter of a musician who never stopped striving to share his passion with the world. They stand as a reminder that real dedication to an art form isn't just about longevity. It's about remaining fervent and engaged, no matter how many decades of playing lie behind you. For Johnny Winter, that fervor remained unbroken right up until the very end. Johnny Winter's life story is a testament to both the power and the price of true musical genius. Despite personal battles and the heartbreaking end to his journey, he never ceased to captivate audiences with his fiery guitar work and dedication to the blues. His final album, Step Back, released shortly after his death, stands as a fitting tribute, showcasing that even in his last days, his artistry never wavered. Thank you for watching, and we hope this video helps keep his music, influence, and spirit alive for generations to come.